Dr. Biodun Adedipe, who is an economist, joins us this morning. Well, thank you for coming out this morning.
It's my pleasure.
Well, we're actually focusing on the World Economic Forum for Africa. This year, we'll have regional and global leaders converge in Africa, in Abuja, as a matter of fact, to discuss the theme of actually forging inclusive growth, creating jobs. And one wonders, taking a look at it from our current situation now, with all these headlines one looks at, when the forum eventually holds, I'm just thinking, those kind of topics, issues that will be discussed at the time, creating jobs, and the challenges we face here, how do you see us successfully just hoisting, or do I say pushing through those topics in spite of what we're currently going through now, if you were to look at now and looking ahead?
Yeah, that's a good thing to observe, but I will put it in this context. And the first context is that the world needs Nigeria at this point in time. And I say that deliberately because of what is happening around the world. Now, if you especially look at the beginning of this year, when people began to look at the global economy and to ask themselves, where are the new investment opportunities coming from? And also looking at the history of the last 15 years, thereabout, when the idea of the BRICS came on the scene. And then investors globally began to look at, where do we make the next round of good money? And then they identified Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Now, over that period of time, these four economics actually proved to be a good source of money making for investors. Then came a time, the global financial crisis, and everything dampened. And now the next question is, where will the next growth opportunities come from for investors? And then the idea of the mint now came up from the same man. Of course, the mint had actually existed as a coinage, okay? But O'Reilly now said, hey, wait a minute. I see here some countries that we should give a new designation. We've been talking about emerging markets. Now, there are 4 countries that, in my own estimation, I see as the frontier economies. And that was where Nigeria's name came up again. That is outside of the N11 that we had in 2005, 2007, that actually gave birth to Nigeria's Vision 2020. Yeah. Okay? So now, looking at this, the position is that, yes, frontier economies. You talk about Mexico, you talk about Indonesia, Nigeria, and then Turkey. And so the big question is, Nigeria is presenting the world, and that's why I said the world needs Nigeria, with opportunities for money making, and that will be even from now into the long term. Because the projection actually is that over the next 20 years, Nigeria will provide opportunities for investors that they probably cannot easily find elsewhere in the world. And that is what investors are actually looking at. Now, that's on the one side. The other side of it actually connects to the theme of the forum, which is inclusive growth, and then, of course, job creation. Yeah. Again, we situate that in context of what has happened to our economy in the last 10 to 15 years. Again, coincidentally, we've enjoyed growth, no doubt, an average of about 6.7%. In fact, 6.71 to be specific, in the last 11 years, average GDP growth rate. Now, this growth has been without development, as we normally say it in economics, and that is, there has been no trickle down. So the issue now is, how do we grow this economy in such a way that it creates development? And that can only come when you create jobs, which means those jobs must be created here in Nigeria. That's inclusive growth. Exactly, so inclusive growth. So it must therefore be created in Nigeria and not offshore. And I mean simply that anytime you import anything whatsoever, you are creating jobs offshore. So if investors come and now put their money here on the ground to create jobs, jobs will be created here. And the growth you also see will include a lot more people. That's the part where they talk about what? The hot money that is not usually invested in the country, that it just circulates and then usually just flees. Now, the hot money is a different perspective to it. Now, hot money looks at opportunities in the stock market. And all they do is, they've done all their projections for how the stock market will respond to the various reforms taking place within the economy. And so chances are that stocks today that might appear to be penny stocks will in fact gain value over time. And so we can come in with what we might call cheap naira. Cheap naira because the naira exchange rate makes it very, very interesting for an investor to come in with a few dollars, convert to naira, and buy a lot of stocks in Nigeria. And then, of course, in the course of time, he divests and he takes out his money. And of course, most of the time, the reason we call it hot money is because these monies live at the slightest sign of worry.
And that's not deeply invested.
They are not deeply invested. Now, the kind of investment that the forum here is looking at are those that will go into the real sector, which are the ones that actually create jobs, as different than the hot money.
We know how governance is very important, to create jobs, inclusive growth, part of the forum. But now that we're in an election year, we know that they will focus a lot on elections. We have 2 this year, 1 next year. So, do you see us, or do you see the economy growing as much as it ought to, even with that attention of ours? So, by the way, you even have national conference coming up. Yes. How are we going to focus on all these things, yet expect that same kind of growth in the economy?
There is no doubt that because the elections will take a lot of the attention of our leaders this year and next year, that the economy certainly might not be able to grow at the pace we project with all these reforms, and expected reforms anyway, because the idea that will come from the forum too will lead into some new reforms. But whether now, in terms of governance, we'll be able to give more attention to that in the light of elections will be an issue. So yes, the economy will still grow because of efforts in the private sector, also partnering more with the government, and on the other hand, also looking for opportunities to grow their wealth. So now, yes, the economy will grow, but certainly it might not be able to grow as fast as we desire, especially if there's governance that works along with the kind of reforms we desire.
One of the things that struck me when you began to talk about, first of all, about the BRICS, and then you talked about economic recession, and now investors are looking for the next frontier of investment. Do you see a kind of, I don't want to use that word, but it's the one that readily comes to mind, a use and dump situation here, in the sense that, you're done with the BRICS, where's the next place, where else can we put our money? Is that how it works, or is it that it's no longer as attractive as it used to be, or those ones have stabilized so much so that the marginal profit is very little, and they're looking for where next they can make the next big money? Is that what's happening?
In actual fact, that is what is happening, and I will put it in this manner. When you look first at the more advanced economies, some of them are now recovering, okay, but the growth prospects are not as bright as any typical investor will want it. And so you invest in such economies, what you obtain as return on your investment is within a very thin margin. So naturally, investors will look around the globe and say, we are next. That was what brought up the BRICS, as we said earlier on. Now, at some point, in fact, in 2005 to be specific, most investors went back, because having seen that the projections about the BRICS turned out exactly as projected between 2001 and 2004. So the question was posed to the team at Goldman Sachs, where is the next investment and growth opportunity coming from? And that was when, of course, they reviewed the macroeconomic forecast, and they came up with 11 countries that included Nigeria, which was when we started talking about the next 11. In fact, that coinage was because of this issue you raised. That is the next frontier from where investors can make good money and create wealth.
So are you saying that the BRICS, their lifespan of being just the BRICS lasted just 4 years?
No, not really. They are still there, okay? But the issue is that for investors, they are no longer as attractive as they were. Believe you me, if you look at an economy within 4 years that did over 400% growth rate in the stock market, another among the banks that did over 600, in fact 643% growth in 4 years. Any investor would want to be there, okay? And having made such money, the natural question to ask is, hey, you made a forecast. That forecast turned out right. I made good money. So look into your crystal ball again and let me have an idea where the next growth will come from. Now, if you look at the meat we are talking about now, the frontier economies, that is Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. The basic thing working for them is that their economies are not big, and therefore they have enough room for growth, and fast one at that. Secondly, population-wise, then even the structure of that population. Okay, so the consideration is that if you look at Nigeria now, and also against the fact that Nigeria also is creating more millionaires than we had ever done. That's also a recent phenomenon. So in which case, we are having more Nigerians coming to the millionaire bracket in the global survey that is conducted annually. And that means anyone who has $1 million is in the millionaire class. Nigeria is creating a lot more. And that has happened in recent times. So the whole world is now looking at it, hey, if Nigeria is going to create more of that, that means the middle class is going to expand. And if the middle class expands, link that to consumption, and then look at the population, very useful. So over the next 20 years, that means the population that is grown and also moved into middle class will expand.
Okay.
And that will be a huge market.
Now, this